Hi, live from San Francisco. I'm Sid, the co-founder and CEO at GitLab. And today we're going to talk about becoming a remote startup. I'm here with Beray. Do you want to introduce yourself and ask the first question?
Sure. I am Beray from Istanbul. We are building a cloud platform for Internet of Things business. I am the founder of the project, leading my team. So I think that's wrap it up for me. And I'd like to start with the topic called breaking the routine for becoming a startup. As you know, there are some paths and some routines for becoming startup in the world. There are some books and even some lectures on internet. But I'd like to ask specifically to you, what do you think about them? And do you believe that is it must-have things to get educated about startup topics? Since we are in technology area, I believe that it is not the first important thing to learn how to manage people, how to manage money, but it's a little bit problem while starting a new startup, since many people ask some routine questions about our business plan, revenue plan, and so on. But since the beginning, do you believe that is it the most important thing while building a fresh new startup in technology area?
Yeah, I subscribe to what Y Combinator says about this. And that's the most important thing is that you make something people want. And that you have an idea about how you want to do that and you're testing that. The rest of the things can be learned. So at Y Combinator, you apply, most of the people that apply are technical founders. They understand the market, they understand the technology involved. And they teach them all the other things that you have to learn, all the business things, recruiting a team, managing a team, finance, fundraising, growing, all these other things. I do think it's helpful to reference materials about that. Y Combinator has a good blog post, and they even have an online course, and there's lots of other resources on the internet. There's a lot of things you can do wrong, and it will cost you more time and money, and time and money is of the essence in a startup. So I do think you should read up whenever you're confronted with one of the problems. But the most essential thing is that you make something people want.
Oh, cool. Before getting to YC, since I'm going to ask few questions about that, YC is also a challenge. I mean, many startups wish to join YC, as you know. But before getting into that, I believe that startups should be open, can be show their product. So if we focus that time process, do you believe that everything must be start with YC? For example, it doesn't have to be YC, but do you recommend that we also can open our product into existent before joining any program such as YC? Just believing your thoughts or self-thoughts or reading some materials as you noticed that. So the key problem while building a startup, at least for us and several startups, I thought, joining YC is also a huge problem. I mean, the challenge is high. You need to be ready. So during that time, do you still recommend joining some programs before YC, for example, to fix some key problems? Or do you encourage the new startups before even they are not a startup to test their product with people, share their product if they believe it's okay? So I think your opinion is also important about this topic?
Yeah, if you look at most successful startup, they didn't go through any incubator program. So that's probably the primary way. You can totally do it without joining Y Combinator. And that's the primary way. Now, Y Combinator doesn't make your startup successful. They preferably take startups that will be successful anyway, and then save them a bit of time and money by giving them good advice and helping them with fundraising. So they're not gonna make your startup successful. They'll just make it a bit more successful than it would otherwise be. Most startups don't do YC. Then there's the startups that do YC, and then there's all the other incubators in the world. All the other incubators in the world, I think they have less than 10% of the billion-dollar companies that YC has. So if your goal is a startup in the Silicon Valley sense, billion-dollar startup, like trying to become a unicorn, I don't think joining any other program than YC makes sense. Joining YC, however, is not essential. There's lots of good startups that didn't join, and I know some great startups that were rejected by YC. So it's not required at all. And yes, you should start your company and open it up and start getting users and revenue, even if you're not in YC yet. In fact, that's one of the best ways to get it into YC, to show a lot of traction.
I ask because there's my idea to apply YC. Instead of showing my sketches, ideas, and wishes, just showing and introducing product that works, that has users, and some wishes, as you guessed. So that's why I asked, because I've seen many people just focus to join some incubators or YC, and they don't focus on product. Instead of, they focus how their ideas. So that's why I believe that product is more important than targeting joining YC. And thank you for answering.
Those people are mistaken. Like YC, it's pretty hard to get in with just an idea. Better than an idea is a user graph, and even better than that is a revenue graph. So make sure you have a revenue graph that goes up and to the right.
Okay, cool. Another topic I'd like to talk about is the relation between quality and time balance. I mean, since such as us, while building a fresh project to become a startup, successful startup, there's a problem. Many people say that the product that just works is enough to test on area, to test with users, even to apply some incubators or YC, for example, design, for example, speed. But I don't believe that it is not necessary to test just wireframes or user experience without design. So it doesn't make sense for me, but there is an and belief all around the world. Try to talk with many people as I can, and they all said to me, just release your product and don't focus a lot on design, don't focus on speed. So those are the things you are going to fix. But I believe that instead of releasing with ugly MVP, I prefer to make users meet our product while it has beautiful design and very fast speed, infrastructure, and so on. So what do you think about that? Is it just a waste of time? I mean, I'm not talking about every startup, just talking about technology area. So what would you think about that?
Yeah, so
would you spend time on design while building the first release of your product and so on, the other things?
Yes, I would. So when a startup is small, it's not that you can say, oh, I'm going to focus just on product or just on finance or just on, you have to do all the things, but you have to do them in the smallest way possible. I think so definitely design and user experience is part of a product, so you should focus time there too. The only caveat to that is don't delay anything. Like, it would be very bad if you had a minimum viable product and you delay the introduction because you want to work more on design. So get it out there. If you join YC, the first thing they'll ask is your product public yet? And if not, they'll ask you to make it public in 1 or 2 days, because that's the most important thing. So yes, do focus on design, but don't delay anything because of that.
Okay, cool. So as far as I remember from your former videos, former interviews, you were a small team when GitLab first introduced it, right? You were about 7 or 9 people.
Yeah, so GitLab started in 2011. I started in 2012. And in 2015, we joined YC with 9 people.
Yeah, 9 people. So it's also a small amount of team. I mean, huge people. So during building GitLab, how did you decided to release GitLab? I mean, how did you separate the features you offer to end user? So was it just about money which you have, or did you decide to separate them with months or years or hardness?
Yeah, so
how did you work about that?
So Dimitri, my co-founder, made GitLab. He was working on it a year before I even saw it. And he made what he needed himself. He needed collaboration software, version control software he could run himself at this company where he worked. So he decided to make that. And GitLab CI which is kind of the second product, was also what Dimitri made, because he never wanted to upgrade another Jenkins server in his life. So he made his own CI software. So both times we made just something that he wanted. I think right now we're a bit more balanced. Sometimes we make things where we think that people want, but all the time we put something out there and then we wait for users to tell us what to build next.
Okay. And now I'd like to ask about a few questions related with YC and seed round. After those years, would you still recommend joining YC? As far as I understood, you still recommend that, right?
Yeah, if you're a technical team, I think it's highly recommended.
Yeah. And what about the first problem for startup? It's called seed round. Do you think when it should be started and when it should be a problem for a small team to get into seed round to access a big audience? I mean, just about money or feeling?
Yes.
When would you recommend that?
Yeah, don't use financing as your marketing strategy. Like, yes, if you raise money, you get a press release, but it doesn't move the needle sustainably. So raise money because you raise money, and raise money as late as possible. Like we bootstrapped for a while, and 3 years. 3 years, and that was fine, and we could afford that, and it bought us more time. As soon as you start raising money, you get on a treadmill that keeps running faster, and you have to make sure you don't fall off. So you can de-risk by bootstrapping, by living off the revenue, like doing a cash flow positive company. But it depends a bit. If you see that there's other companies going after the same idea, you might have to go faster.
Okay, so would you recommend investment before applying YC?
Well, some people will never get in YC and have a successful company. So yes, it depends is the answer.
Yeah, okay. So what about you have a limited money and you believe that you have a beautiful, great product that might be solved some critical problems, but you're about to run out of cash, but you also don't want investment at the early stage. I mean, you are not ready for that. You just want to focus more and more on your product. What would you do at that situation?
Yeah, I'd make sure I have a well-paying day job. I worked full-time as a Ruby on Rails consultant while I bootstrapped the company. So I worked in my evenings and my weekends, and I hired someone at a lower rate than me because he was living in another country to work full-time on the product. So yeah, make it work. Reduce your costs, increase your income outside of the company, and try to make it work.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about choosing people? For example, you don't have a lot of money to get people into your team for full time, but instead you work with some freelancers. But there's also a problem since they also work so you lose a lot of time while developing a product. So in that situation, would you still wait the correct time, or would you stop current process and apply for investment, or I mean, for example, YC or other stuff to get some people on board for a full-time work?
Yeah, that's a hard decision. I cannot make it for you. I think in general, you have a lot of time in a startup. As you're in the early stages, time is on your side, but there's no big rush. You didn't make anybody a big promise. You're not running out of cash because your burn rate is very low. So you have time to use it to your advantage. As soon as you take investment, now you have to make progress or else you run out of cash and have to shut down the company. So as long as you have time, it's a great advantage. Now there's the risk of competition, but I think most founders overestimate that risk. They think someone's going to steal their idea or start a competing product. Most of the time, it's not true. For us, the reason to apply to YC and grow faster was when we lost a customer to that switched, and we're like, oh, what's wrong with GitLab? And he said nothing, but that our head office decided to use GitHub for everything. So we have to switch. Then we realized like, wow, this market is going to consolidate, so we better start growing faster. So there must be a strategy and a reason behind speeding up. And as soon as you go that route, as soon as you go YC and you raise external investment, and it's on. You have to show progress every single month. That makes it much less likely that you'll succeed. Less than 10% of the startups succeed. If you're going slowly, then it's a bit up to your personal stamina and your ability to convince other people to keep working on it, which is much more in your control. So yeah, raising money, you have to pay it back 10 times. You better make sure you have something that works and you can accelerate, because you want to be accelerating in the right direction. If you have to change direction, it's very painful.
Okay, thanks. And also I watched some your interviews, and as far as I remember correctly, you made some mistakes or miscalculation for pricing, right? For the early stage of GitLab.
For sure.
Yeah. So what would you recommend after these years? How to calculate on your pricing, such as your company, such as online product?
Yeah.
Just subscription and self-hosted options.
Yeah. So technical founders, especially first-time ones, tend to underprice. It's what I did too. You tend to ask for too little money. So ask for more money would be the easy answer. And then you should have about 20% of your customers that really want the product say, no, I'm not going to buy the product because it's too expensive. Then you're probably priced at the right range. Like if half of them don't buy it because it's too expensive, it's probably too pricey. If 10% doesn't buy it because of the price, you can probably raise prices and be better off.
That makes sense. Thanks. Um, how did you test, or did you do any stress test? For example, while growing up, imagine that you have million of users, and how did you test your infrastructure while calculating cost plans for users and users? Is there any technique, or it's just basic math?
Yeah, I to calculate costs, I would just take your current costs, take your current users, and figure it out, or just make some back of the napkin calculations. I don't think there's any. If you're very small, it doesn't make sense to invest a lot of time in it.
Okay, so what about market analysis? I mean, for example, while building a product exist, I mean, it's not alternative to another solution. So, and also you are planning that it's going to be a global product. How would you do market analysis in addition to social media or joining some local events? Would you recommend any strategy?
So the video is a bit laggy, but I understood your question to be how do you do market analysis? And I would say for the market analysis, you make sure that you have a great overview of all the different players in where you are. Like understand who's there, understand how they're different than your product. And I think that try their product, sign up for their product, write down your notes. I think you should, if you're going to spend a year working on your product, makes sense to spend 1 or 2 weeks looking at everything that's out there.
Okay, so since you are a remote company, and I know you talk each applicant, right? At the last stage, you talk
last
them,
stage until 150.
When someone apply to work with you, right?
And I did the last interview until we were 150 people. We're now 470 people.
Yeah. And so, how did you work on recruitment while you are in early stage? I mean, you are very small. Did you apply the same stages, or did you just post online jobs?
So in the beginning, first hire was a person I worked for in a previous company. Actually, he was still on the payroll of that company, just transferred that. Second hire was Dimitri, so he was the author of the project, and he sent out a tweet, "I want to work on GitLab full time," and I started paying him. The third and fourth hire were people I knew through previous jobs, and I recruited them into GitLab. So I think in the beginning, you're going to be reaching out to people you know are really good and trying to convince them. Our sixth hire was a salesperson, and he reached out like, "I'm seeing GitLab being used in all my accounts. Can I join?" And we kind of dated for three months or something before he decided to join. So many of the best people you hire will have alternatives, so you have to spend a lot of time trying to convince them to join. And then when you get a bit bigger, people hopefully get excited, and then they start applying at vacancies. In the beginning, you should probably post vacancies, but probably not a lot of people are going to respond.
Okay. Did you face with any issue while hiring remote people? I mean, did has some negative effect on your your working routine? I mean, the GitLabs. Have you ever had to stop some process or progress because of hiring problem at the early stage? Okay. So, what about physical meetings? I mean, do you still prefer some physical meetings with your any kind of team in GitLab?
Not really, although I must say with the e-group, the executive group, we do have an offsite every quarter where we spend a couple of days together for like a lot of meetings scheduled sequentially. And we bring the whole company together every 9 months. And then we also do local meetups like every month or so. So I don't mind, but there's no meeting at GitLab that is always in person.
Okay, cool. Did you ever made a beta duration for your product?
Did I ever make a what for the product?
The beta duration. I mean, your product is a beta.
Okay. Yeah, I started GitLab. I had the idea, like I saw GitLab and I thought, wow, there must be, doesn't anybody offer that as a service? So I started a landing page like saying, hey, I want to start GitLab as a service. If you're interested, please leave your email here. And so that was the start. I didn't build anything. I just made a splash page and leave your email form.
And you just waited for some users, right?
Yeah, then I posted to Hacker News and no one, it didn't get upvoted. And I went downstairs to bake pancakes and then someone upvoted it to the homepage. And a couple of hundred people left their email address.
Okay, cool. So recently, I believe that you made public your serverless production for GitLab, right? Some
Correct.
technical things. Do you also planning offer some solutions for Internet of Things business, since the device is becoming very popular and getting more powerful? And I saw some people tried installing self-hosted GitLab on some Raspberry Pis, which is very small, basic computers. So in the future, I believe that devices will need to update itself and update their code itself. So maybe it's internal, but do you have any plans or ideas to offer some solutions for that instead of manually deploying something from device to device and so on?
So your question, whether GitLab will support IoT, Internet of Things devices?
No, since GitLab support everything.
There's people deploying code to cars and satellites and other things with GitLab.
Yeah, that's cool. But I mean, for example, when people wants to update their code on their devices, they still need to those engineering stuff. But instead, such as GitLab offer many features for now easily without writing a single code. So would you also planning some things such as serverless architecture for IoT business?
Yeah, I think so.
For example, connecting those devices easily instead of self-hosted solution. Since you have a web IDE, which is also nice to update code and then pushing to device and so on for that stuff. Do you have any plan?
That makes a lot of sense. We don't have any big plans in the pipeline for the coming months that come to mind, but we want to make writing code easier. We want to make deploying code easier. We want to make it easier to control the environments where you deploy your code. So I could see people adding things for IoT and other things. For the coming months, we're very much focused on people like regular server environments, your staging environment, your production environment, making sure that's all listed in GitLab and you have all the metrics, logging and tracing that you need there.
Okay. For example, you just released Kubernetes setup with ease in the latest months. So it's very easy to start with Kubernetes cluster. So would you do same thing if there will be a platform that you like to integrate with for IoT devices, such as easily Kubernetes setup, to make people able to set up their devices and push their code into those devices easily? without, engineering stuff. So
Yeah,
would it make sense for you?
We'd be open to that. The advantage of Kubernetes is that it's a worldwide standard. Every public cloud is supporting it. If something like that comes up for IoT, I'm sure we'll jump on the opportunity to support it. And actually, Kubernetes might be that standard, but we'll see.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So one last thing. Would you visit different cities a lot to meet people, and how those things go with, you talk with many people in different time zones, and I know there's a remote startup point, so that would also be nice to cover in this conversation. Would that be a problem for you, working with different time zones?
So I think time zones is still very hard. Most of our people and most of our team members and our customers and our users are in the United States and Europe. So meetings tend to gravitate to a time that's appropriate for that. So it's hard to keep in touch with all our team members in Asia Pacific. We try to do as many things asynchronous as we can and make lots of recordings, but it's not ideal. So it's the end of distance, but not of time zones.
So it's still a problem, right? Time zones.
Yep, it's still a problem.
Okay. Let's wrap it up about my questions. And thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for your time. Thanks for the chat.